Components of internal control systems is what we are going to be looking at today. We had looked at some aspects of control, like that of types of control, the definition of internal control system. We've overviewed it already. So under this topic now, the components of internal control system, we are going to be detailed a bit about it, looking at the risk assessment. We are going to touch on control procedures. We are going to touch on information and communication aspects of as part of components. We are going to touch on monitoring. We are going to touch on control activities, and these are a bit of detailed type of topic. After this component of internal control, we'll be looking at the limitation of internal control, and it promises to be exciting, and not only exciting, it's going to be rewarding as we are breaking internal control systems up into smaller pieces because of our exams. And no one watches this video concerning auditing and assurance this diet and will not pass. I guarantee you. You know why? Because I'm very sure internal control will come at every level. Internal control as a topic will come at every level of our examination. So stay tuned, and it's going to be a bit of detailed, and I hope you are ready for it. So if you are ready, I'm ready. Please, let's go. And don't forget to subscribe and to click the notification and click all. Risk assessment. When we are talking about risk assessment in auditing and assurance, is very important and germane that the management must ensure that they establish methods and mechanisms to identify risk within the system, to analyze risk within the system, and to manage risk that are likely to have impact on the services delivered or the deliveries and goods we are producing and the achievement of our desired outcome. It is very important. And you know what? For us to ensure that we talk much into detail about risk assessment, there is a series about risk assessment videos that had already been made. So towards the end of this video, we are going to put it so that we can learn about risk assessment. It's a bit elaborate. Like I told you, this video will be a bit into detail, but we will try as much as possible to ensure that if we have details already, we can refer you so that we can maximize our time efficiently. Another component of internal control is information communication systems that must be put in place. But before I move on to risk assessment, which I'd love that you equally watch into detail of this series already, it is important to equally mention under risk assessment that change is the constant thing in every environment. Therefore, changes come with risk, and we must be able to analyze, identify what is changing, the trend, and put mechanisms and procedures, methods in place to do this for us and manage it for us. So part of what we need to understand and monitor, if I can use that word under risk assessment, is personnel changes, information system changes and technology, rapid growth in our industry, and also new programs and services like product development, and like we always come with their individual risk which we must monitor. Inherent risk also in our organization or in our industry, we must take care of it. I want to believe by now we know what inherent risk means. Those are the risks that actually come with the industry. They come with industry. If you don't like ants, don't sell sugar. I hope we understand. If you don't like spillage or spillages, don't sell kerosene or liquid. You know what? Because some are a bit will spill, no matter how articulate, no matter how will I put it, methodical we are, a bit will still spill because it is inherent risk in the business. So okay, so we need to ensure the complexity of our business is actually adhered to and monitored. We analyze it, we have a method in place to identify the complexity and how to deal with it. And also, for example, cash receipts in our organization come with a risk factor too, and is of course being discouraged. So we try as much as possible to ensure we manage it. Information and communication control is another type of and component of internal control. And when we are talking about this, we are talking about the general controls, we are talking about the application controls and other communication controls that we must put in place, both electronic and otherwise. When we are now talking about application control under internal control system now, we need to put structure in place. Application control policies must be in place and procedures that are applied to separate individual and computerized application. Also, our general control also must include and have policies and procedures in place also to help ensure proper business operations and effective communication. Under internal control concerning application information control system, we need to talk about access and security. We must have control or controls put in place to check or checkmate access. We must put in place data and program security. We must put in place physical security like manning the gate actually. We must put in place software development and program changes and controls so that nobody just go and change program, or whether they understand how the program was actually put together and coded or not. We must put it in place. There must be data center operations that we must put in place, and also we must ensure service continuity, disaster recovery. These are some of the information and communication systems and internal control that we must put in place under these components. Generally, controls and control procedures must put in place, some of which we had already mentioned. When we are talking about control procedures, they are all internal policies, procedures, methodologies that we put in place to ensure all the processes are functioning the way they should function. Even process is part of the control that we must put in place. There must be processes and we must ensure they are working. So we've spoken about risk assessment and directed us more elaborately to watch the video for comprehensive analysis and discussion about it. We've spoken about infotech system and control. We've spoken generally about control procedure. Let's look at monitoring. Part of a component of internal control is monitoring. We must ensure systems, procedures are in place to measure and to observe and to report performance. That's and those are under monitoring to ensure we people do what they're supposed to do. That, like, there's an adage that said that people don't always do what is expected, people do what it is inspected. That is, when somebody knows that somebody will come later to check what he or she has done, we always try and strive to do better and ensure what we do. We give our best to whatsoever we are doing. Unlike you, we know that nobody cares to check things around. So that is about monitoring. Management must put in place procedures or a department like internal control departments, internal audit to monitor things. Let's look at another component, which is the control environment. The control environment. Control environment actually could be said to be the foundation on which everything else in internal control system is actually standing on. So it's the foundation in which everything rests. We are talking about management's attitude here. We are talking about individual attributes, integrity, ethical values. We are talking about competence or competencies of everybody within the organization, both top or bottom, authority and the like. We are talking about the top tone of the organization, management outlook towards internal control system, whether internal control is being overridden or is being adhered to even by the top management staff and the like. That is control environment. Is the totality of our attitude, behavior towards the internal control system put in place, whether it's working, whether it's going to work, or whether it cannot work effectively because of our attitude. That is internal, the control environment actually. Last but not the least that we'll be looking at under the component is control activity. So we can ask ourselves, what are control activities? Basically, control activities can be said to be actions that are supported by organization's policy and procedures, and how these actually help assure ourselves, particularly the management, that the directive are adhered to, risks are well managed, and everything we do are done promptly, properly, and timeliness is important. So these can be said to be the control activities definition. Everything we do to ensure, or that we must do to ensure that the policies in place are adhered to minimize the risk, to ensure that management directives are addressed and taken care of. Those are control activities. And examples of control activity, like there could be a question that asks us, mention 3 control activities. What and what will you say? Some of the examples are what I'm going to give us now. Authorization and approval, which earlier videos have addressed what authorization and approval are and the differences and similarity between approval and authorization. So these are the first control activities that I'm mentioning: authorization and approval. Also, reviews of operating performance, like our appraiser, biannual, quarterly appraiser, annual appraiser, and the like, could be under review of operating performance. Supervision cannot be emphasized and is part of control activity. We talk about segregation of duty, like authorizing, processing, recording, reviewing, and we split them into smaller pieces among ourselves. That is segregation and delegation of duty. Control over access to resources and records is or her control activity. Reconciliation, especially we find ourselves in the accounts department. Verifications, the various level of verifications, third-party confirmation, debtors confirmation, creditors verification, and the like, and all manners of reviews of processes and activities are all geared towards one thing: ensuring internal control systems is actually working. These are some of the components of internal control systems. Next that we will be looking at will be, we want to know limitations of internal control systems. Limitation of internal control systems. What we are going to be looking at, just as we know that internal control system is man-made, and because it's man-made, it's not perfect, and everything that is not perfect can only be ascribed to humanity, right? Okay, so we will be looking at imperfection about internal control system and how we can actually address them a bit too to help the system. From G. James Associate, Benga Olatunji James, FCA, has actually been speaking. For those that are joining us for the first time, we would like that you subscribe. You must have enjoyed value for your time. Please subscribe and follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube, G. James Associates, on Facebook, G. James Associates, and Benga Olatunji. Like, comment, and of course, you can reach out to us using our Yahoo Mail, which is being displayed. We've spoken about 4 aspects now of our, even more than 4. We've spoken about 6 rather aspects and components of internal control system. We've spoken about risk assessment. We've spoken about monitoring. We've spoken about control activity. We've spoken about information or infotech and communication system. We've spoken about control procedures, and last but not the least, we had spoken about control environment. So next, please join us so that we can talk about the next topic, which is the limitation of internal control systems.